There were about 2,000 sightings in Belgium. Now, in fact, one of the places where this triangular craft is most often seen is around secret testing bases in California, particularly down by Lancaster.
I have seen one, Jim.
Yeah, that's right. I've heard you speak of that. And actually, a military official in Northern California admitted that the triangle is a government craft. He called it a transport. Also, according to Aviation Week in 1991, they said that diamond-shaped and triangular configurations are the trend now. Now, like I said, I'm no expert on this, but this would lead me to believe that there is a technology that we don't know about that includes this very slow-moving, huge craft, and that it's not alien.
Perhaps not. But Jim, it's a big story either way. What flew over me, no.
Sure.
It didn't fly over me, Jim. It floated over me. What came over me was defying gravity, doing about 30 miles an hour, 150 feet from one point of the triangle to the other, very low, about 150 feet above me, classic stuff. Close encounters of the third kind. Stars blank out, moon blanks out. This thing passes directly over our head.
Yeah.
And so that's technology that I don't know that we have right now.
That kind of blows my mind as well, but I got a call from a lady who lives just outside of Lancaster about 6 weeks ago, and she lives right in a nexus of about 5 different secret testing bases down there. And she said that she saw a huge aircraft at very low level, perhaps at about 50 feet. Now, this thing was glowing, but it did one heck of a big circle around her area of tract homes,
yes,
moving at an extremely slow speed. So I think the story here is an amazing new, perhaps anti-gravity technology. But again and again, I never see this smoking gun linking it to the grays with the big eyes.
All right, let's move back to the Men in Black for a second. Your book begins with an interesting angle, the black arts, demons, witches,
yeah,
that sort of thing?
Sure.
How does that fit in?
Well, these guys, the Men in Black, just as they're described today, have manifested since my earliest cases, I think, go back to the 1500s. And back in those days, they were always referred to as agents of the devil, and were usually seen in the context of witchcraft rituals and satanic sabbats, and that sort of thing. As we went forward and as we went into the irreligious 20th century, people started interpreting these guys differently, and they were more often seen with UFOs and shutting up witnesses of UFOs. And when people were hassled by the Men in Black, they didn't immediately think, here's an envoy of Satan. They thought of them as extraterrestrials.
All right, I want to read you something. Take a moment out and read you a letter that I've got from a listener, if you wouldn't mind, and see if this fits anywhere into your Men in Black, all right?
Sure.
Art, I want to tell you a true story of the Men in Black. My father had fought cancer for several years. In the fight, he had lost his nose to surgery and had to wear a fake one made for him. He lost all of his teeth and half his jawbone. He suffered through radiation to be told that it was all gone, and 30 days later there was nothing more that radiation could do to save him. Then he went through chemotherapy, sickness only to reach the point that the doctors were continuing to keep him bleeding. It was working. Next, my mother died of a heart attack 2 months after my father was expected to be dead. But he wasn't. But now he was feeling the loss of my mother. And after he had made plans to see that she was taken care of after he was gone, I can tell you all of this because I've got to know what happened next. The only thing keeping him alive was his insistence that he would see the grave marker installed that he picked out for my mother and himself. As you know, partners frequently go together. I added that. I took him to the gravesite in a wheelchair less than a week before he died. One evening I was sitting at home with my wife and small children when my sister called from my father's house saying she was frightened, wanted me to come right over. When I got there, Dad was insisting that my sister and his caregiver take him home. Of course, he was already home. When I asked where home was, he gave me the address of where he grew up. Insisted I take him there. I really couldn't do that since the house had been sold after the death of his mother. The night later, and we decided that he would be more comfortable at the hospital than at home. The next day I went to see him. He was still wanting to go home. The next evening, my sister and I were with him. He began to talk to us and tell us he was sorry that he had been so much trouble, and he realized how out of it he had been recently. I told him it was all right. He told me he was glad that they had come to visit him and set him straight. I said, who came to visit? And he said, the men in black. I asked him who they were. And he said he didn't know. But they came to visit him, and they were going to give him a message, or did give him a message. I asked, what was the message? He told me they would return soon to take him to be with my mother. Of course, she was now dead. This is, and it goes on, and it's from Ron. Thank you, Ron. Does that sound at all familiar, Jim?
Yeah, there we're talking really an event that is more usually framed in olden days, with the witchcraft connection, or these guys are often seen in, for instance, a religious area like Ireland, where they're observed at graveside and so forth. So that fits in perfectly, actually.
All right, again, the demonic connection, that goes, you're saying that is where it began around, you think, in the 1500s.
Right.
And they were actually described as men in black even then?
Oh, yeah. In very much in detail, you know, they're black silk suits, and they're black hats, and oftentimes these guys then wouldn't be, of course, driving the black Cadillacs, but they would be driving black coaches or black cars. So it's fairly seamless up until today, but these days I guess they've changed their mode of transportation.
No reason the modern ones, I suppose, shouldn't use automobiles.
It is odd, which is something that is almost too obvious to say about the Men in Black. They're really an odd collection.
I assume that you have more stories yourself of the appearance of these men.
Yeah, I do.
Enough that you have become convinced yourself there is something to it.
Indeed, and that was really the way it took place. Was I started out initially extremely skeptical about this whole subject, but after reviewing dozens or perhaps at least 100 cases on the Men in Black, I found that I could explain a great deal of it. I could explain a lot of it as government. I could explain a good deal of it as hoaxers. I could say the detail on this sounds like this UFO buff was imagining all this, but still there was this residue of paranormality. And frankly, I'm not really known as a researcher into the paranormal. I mean, my book, like Black Helicopters Over America, is extremely down to earth and deals with government conspiracy. But with the Men in Black, they kind of, they maybe sit up and take notice about this paranormal aspect.
Well, I will ask you also about Black Helicopters. Sure. You know, it's been a favorite for a long time.
Sure.
But the Men in Black, maybe you can break it down for me. What percentage of the Men in Black case histories would you say lean toward the paranormal?
I would say a lot of them have paranormal trappings, but the ones that I find unexplainable really probably don't amount to more than 5%. The greatest source, I think, really would be delusion. People see somebody dressed all in black, which is rather common, and they're feeling rather spooked anyway that day, and they interpret it as a man in black. After that, I would say the government has an involvement, and although it sounds a little bit crazy, reading case after case like this, you finally draw the conclusion that, yeah, the government, in order to more thoroughly shut up witnesses, is counterfeiting this Men in Black thing. But as far as things that really look paranormal and things that really can't be explained, they are the exception.
Well, again, I've had government guys visit, and they are intimidating all by themselves. But what you have described, how many of them, for example, in the case of Dr. Hopkins, appear to come without human faces? We're talking about descriptions here. Are there many like that?
I've probably got at least 25 cases like that.
25 cases?
Yeah.
When we get back, I want to ask you how you go about collecting Men in Black stories, interviewing people, that sort of thing, how you even begin to build a database for this sort of book. Fascinating. All right, Jim, hold on. We'll be right back.